literacy for all, but if you can't count to 4, you probably are not going to get those policies passed. The most important thing that you can do as a school board member is to meet and get to know your colleagues, to understand what their issues are, to understand how you can support them in order to get them to support you. When I was on the school board, I was able to get policy passed each time with a 7-0 vote. I authored the African American Learners Initiative with a budget of $1 million, and it was voted on by the school board 7-0. I authored the first Healthy Beverages Act in the nation, where the second largest school district removed all of its soft drinks, all of its empty calories from vending machines. And we really had a hard time. I had a hard time convincing people because that's what booster clubs make their money on, soft drinks at the stadiums during games. But African American children and Latino youngsters are twice as likely to have childhood diabetes. So I could not see how we could not pass a policy that actually affected the health and the well-being of our children for people to make money. So what I discovered was you really have to get to know your other board members. It doesn't matter whether they've been supported by UTLA or Local 99 or charter public school parents. Rachel is absolutely right. You have to forget all of that stuff, and you have to be there to create policy that in fact increases teaching and learning, that in fact increases opportunity for young people.
Thank you.
I think definitely to building, you have to build relationships. We mentioned it, but I think the thing when you're building these relationships, knowing that everyone is there at the table to help and benefit each of these students. I think it has to be reminded on a constant basis why we're there. And often that agenda may be slipped or be missing. And I think as a board member, someone who is in the classroom and understands and is with students face to face and really sees what is going on, you bring a different spin. And I think often our board members have been removed from that equation and have not been adjacent to exactly what's going on in our school sites. So that's essential. I think, and the thing that comes up is to compromise. Some things have to be compromised, but it needs to be compromised with integrity. And I think that's essential to have compromise with integrity when you're building these relationships, because it is necessary. It's going to take time. It's going to be apparent that people will have to be transparent. And you're going to have to draw people to the carpet to say, wow, are you truly going to vote this way for this? Is that really how you feel about our children? And you got to remind them it's our children that we're making these decisions about and why these policies are coming to front. So I think it's really essential, the relationships that are built, that we build with compromising, with integrity, because we know we can't have everything, but then we also have to be reminded face to face with these children, are this or is this best for our children? And be reminded of that face to face and really call people to be transparent.
All right, thank you.
Every decision that you make as a board member impacts all of its employees, whether they are certificated or classified. As a UTLA board member for almost 12 or 13 years, most people on UTLA board and UTLA know that I'm a person of integrity. I'm very fair. I make decisions based on facts. I make decisions based on what is most important for the school district. Most of the board members that are on the board right now, I know most of them. I have met with them, so I know them. Also, I am the only Health and Human Services personnel individual that were able to get the superintendents in the local district to meet with us on a monthly basis. I still meet with the superintendent of district, which is now in the South area. I also meet right now with the director of Health and Human Services. And the reason I meet with her is because I want to make sure that the needs of the community are met, the needs of the employees in the district is met, and especially those in Health and Human Services. I think it's important for us to realize that when you take a position as a school board member, you are representing the community. And you need to make sure that you get 4 votes. How do you get 4 votes? Number one, you have to be a team player. Let me explain what a team player is. It doesn't mean that you're going to agree with what everyone says on the board, but you're going to come there with your research and your facts to make sure that they understand why we should vote a certain way. It's important for us to be able to communicate, number one. Number two, collaborate as a board members. And also it's important for us to realize that we represent not only a district, we represent the whole district of LA Unified School District. And where the needs are, we are to make sure that those needs are met, whether it's in District 1, District 2, District 3, District 4, 5, and 7, or 6. Thank you.
Thank you.
I understand the role of policymakers. I've never been a policymaker as a board member, but I have modified and implemented policy many places, as you know, not only as a school site principal, but as a superintendent and a supervisor of many other people. I believe in collaborative diplomacy and strategic negotiation. But I also believe that the community has to be advocated for and with. You cannot elect somebody and sit back and expect one person to represent all of you unless you're willing to show up. So when you elect, whoever you elect, me, you will be there too. And I will advocate that you be there. I will aggravate you like I aggravate other people all my career. I don't intend to participate in my own oppression. I never have since I was segregated in New Orleans, Louisiana. I will not ride comfortably in the back of the bus. If you ride in the back of the bus, you're being good. If you don't ride at all, you're being right. There's a big difference between being good and being right. So I will not compromise on ethics, justice, equity, or adequacy. So you have to be willing to say, if I elect this person there, to support that person. When you refer to the previous board member, we rarely, if ever, went down to that board and filled up that board room on an issue that the board member advocated for. And so she was outvoted. She was ignored. They weren't indifferent. They're different to that board member in District 1. They're different to you. Do you accept that? If you do, then why are you here? Talking about electing the board member and say, go represent us. That's you and them fighting. Are you in this fight? Do you know what you need? Do you care about what you need? Don't send somebody there who's willing to compromise your value and your needs and say, well, this is the best I could get. You have to keep on fighting. Otherwise, you are participating in your own demise. I don't intend to do that. I don't intend to be reckless. I never have been. I've survived all this time. I've been in the school district, never lost a job, never been fired, been criticized a lot. But it was always because I was representing and advocating for you and children.
Thank you. Thank you. We're going to start with Dr. McKenna on the next question. Thank you, school board members, candidates, for your slight flexibility on that last question. So, since we're in the theme of, political maneuvering and political votes, one of the big issues, of course, right now is local control funding, or LCFF. Starting with Dr. McKenna and then moving down, ending with Ms. Johnson. What do you believe should be the core priorities with LCFF funding? And once again, for everybody, I would assume everybody knows what LCFF funding is. It is a change in the formula from the state that allows for additional monies to go to school districts like LAUSD that have high numbers of foster children, low-income children, bilingual English language learner students, immigrant students, what have you. So here is an opportunity to have some funding for many of the students in our district. So what are the core priorities? And then I guess a kind of a B to that question is advocacy groups like Advancement Project and Community Coalition and many people in this room have advocated for sort of a student formula index, right, where you clearly map out the schools that have the most need and making sure that those funds go to those schools. So first kind of overall question, what do you think the priorities for LCFF funding should be, and what is your take on the proposal that has been put forward by the Advancement Project and Community Coalition, amongst others?
Well, first of all, some people may not realize that LCFF does not guarantee more money for all schools. It's another way of distributing the money that is available. Some schools may not get as much money. What is more important is the LCAP, the accountability plan. How will that money be used, and how do you measure that it's been used effectively? And that's where the community comes in. We have all sorts of priorities. We got to reduce the dropout rate. We've got to serve the standard English learner. I think we try to teach standard English to everyone. A ESL student, a native-born student who's not speaking standard English, those are high priorities. You've got to talk about poverty. You can't reduce poverty, you can't eliminate poverty, but you can serve the needs of children of poverty. And with regards to foster care children, you can do that too. But that's the state's primary responsibility. We can provide additional services during the school day and after school, but don't let the state off the hook because they are the parent of those children. Because you're a foster care child doesn't mean you're automatically deficient. Just because you're a language learner doesn't mean you're deficient. You need some additional services, yes. But my concern is the use of the funds that are available and the accountability of those funds. We can come up with all kinds of ideas about how to use it, but unless you focus on it, some schools need different things than others. District 1 has the greatest need, one of the greatest needs of any other district. And if you think it's fair to distribute the money equally, that's not fair. That's not fair to be that fair. That's not fair at all. That's not called adequacy. That's certainly not called equity. So we must look at what is needed in our schools. We even know what is needed. If someone told you, what do you want to give to a foster care child? Most of us don't know what to give. You can't give him a parent. He doesn't have a parent. He has the state as his parent. But what else does he need? What about his emancipation when he transitions? Does he need something there? Is he falling behind in school? Is he going to graduate on time? Do we expect him to graduate on time? Or we just say, well, just be that way because he's a foster care child. He's not disadvantaged because he doesn't have a parent. Some of us didn't have parents, but we still made it.
Thank you, Dr. McKenna.
The Community Coalition set up a index for looking at the local control accountability fund. And what they decided to do was look at the schools, the 10 high schools that were the most needed. And so they set up a plan where you have the most needed, and then you have the next needed, the highest needed, the high, the moderate, the low needed, and then the lowest needed, and also LA City and LAUS school district. And then what they were looking at is the number of schools within local district 1 that would be affected by these funds. And we know in some of our schools we know, such as Washington High School, Manuel R. Crenshaw High School, Red Heart, and some of our elementary schools in local district 1 are the most needed schools. Well, you know that our district 1 has the highest number of foster care youth in the district, LA Unified School District. And it's important for us to look at the foster care youth because of the fact that many of them usually don't stay in the same community. They might be transferred 2 or 3 months, they may stay in a home, and then they may be transferred into another situation. However, LA Unified, for those who did not know, we have a foster care program in LA Unified that works with foster care youth. But the problem is because of all the cutting of funds, we only have 3 people in LA Unified that deals with foster care youth. There are 8,000 students who are considered to be foster care. So what we need to do is look at the priority of how this money is going to be spent. The next thing you have to look at the dropout rate. The reason that we have such a high dropout rate is because of the economy. We talk about priorities. The district decided to cut so many of the pupil service and attendance council that dealt with dropouts. We still have what is called the K-9 program that deals with only kindergarten and 9th graders who might be on the verge of dropping out.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. When you mentioned LCFF, I think McKenna mentioned the accountability. I think that's critical because, again, this is not brand new that the district is getting funding. However, I think the accountability of how these funds are spent and what the target area is for doesn't shift on us. Because often in the history of LAUSD, we've gotten funds and however it's shifted. And I think that's going to be more important for us to be mindful of when these fundings come to these school sites is how is it going to be spent locally, and whether it states for our ELL students, it states for our foster youth, and she mentioned, and Miss Dorsey. But Dorsey is one of the high schools that I see every day with transit students. I mean, you're wondering, what do we do with this money? When it gets to the local schools, We know at the site what to do with the money. The thing is, at the district level, where we'll be, will it change? Will the funding change its title and not get to those students? And that's what's critical, is that we need to make sure that the money is at the school and it's for the students that it's stated for. As in ELL, it's stated for our youth students that are in foster care, it is stated for our low economic students. Will it stay for those students? And that's critical. And that's the biggest thing that we have to deal with, and making sure that that's transparent and that people can see the accountability for those targeted students, and that they actually get the funds and be able to use it the way in which the school site needs to, because it's not a one-size-fits-all at every school site. And so that needs to be part of the priorities, to make sure that when the funds get to the school, that they're able to use it for those schools as it is stated.
Thank you.
The local control funding formula actually is not exactly new in the state of California. Before the passage of Proposition 13, all money that came into the district came in directly into the district, and the local school district was able to determine how that money was to be spent. After the passage of Proposition 13, 70% of the money that came to a school district came, and it came categorically. It came in stovepipes. It came with strings attached to it. And so it was very difficult for a school district to make sure that that money actually got where it needed to go. One of the things that I think that has to happen with this local control funding formula is that we have to look at the schools that have been underfunded for the last 20 to 30 years. Inner city schools, schools in Ward District 1, schools in Ward District 7, schools in Ward District 4 have been underfunded because we haven't been able to see how money gets spread intra-districtly, inside of the district. And so the priority really needs to be, how do we in fact catch up those schools that have been underfunded for 20 years? And the Achievement Project, along with the Community Coalition, has identified 252 schools in the Los Angeles Unified School District that are the ones that have been underfunded for the past 20 years. Some of them are in Ward District 1, some of them are in Ward District 7, and some of them are in the Pacoima area, which is the East Valley area. They've identified those schools as the schools having the highest need. I think that the funding formula, from my perspective, is a bit out of kilter, because it doesn't include a focus on students who are language learners.
Thank
There
you.
is a focus. Thank you.
Thank you.
That was pretty good.
Thank you. The local control funding formula is a change in how we distribute funds to our local schools. And what I do appreciate about the Advancement Project and the Community Coalition is that they are promoting a more equitable framework on how the monies are distributed and how the monies are allocated to schools that have been institutionally underfunded all these years. And what they're promoting or proposing is a more comprehensive framework to this investment. Now, promoting the Student Formula Index, I believe is something that, as your board member, that I would promote as part of how we look at schools and fund schools and how we implement the LCFF with fidelity. Not only are we looking at the traditional classroom measures and how do we support education, and those educational supports could encompass low-performing schools, English language learners, dropouts, foster youth. But in addition to looking at the traditional measures and how we I guess you could say, look at learning and achievement in our local schools, it also takes into consideration neighborhood variables and neighborhood measures that impact learning and achievement, exposure to violence, access to resources, health and human services, personnel that are available to our students in our communities. So we need to look at all of that and adopt this kind of more comprehensive approach to making sure that these dollars are allocated to the schools that need funding. But what is most important is community and stakeholder engagement. We have to be able to enhance the capacity of our parents and our community members so that they understand what the LCFF is, that they're able to participate, that they have the capacity to lend their voice and to speak about what is needed in their schools. What the LCFF does is allow local school communities to have a voice in meeting their own unique needs. And this is what the categorical type of funding didn't do, but LCFF will.
Thank you so much. And let's give them a round of applause. But also, just as we switch to the next round of questions, I just also want to say that for those of us who work in campaigns, let's honor these candidates who gave their time to come out tonight. People read fundraiser reports and then sometimes think that they don't need to come to these things anymore. So these are very tough battles. These are very tough battles. And so I just want to once again just honor each and every one of you who came tonight. So we're going to, I think we have some questions from the panel, from the audience, right? Or we still have a couple more.
So keep the questions coming after we actually have a set of questions where we're actually going to read over these and we're going to try to kind of combine them and see if there's any trends in the question. We'll ask the ones that are most relevant or most popular. So the next set of questions, as I said earlier, I'm actually a charter school teacher. So what is your opinion on charter school growth within the district? Should we limit or promote charter schools?
Well, we have to understand where the charter school movement came from. Well, first of all, they're legislated into existence and they're not going away. But charter schools are a result of the dissatisfaction with learning and achievement in our local schools. And what we have to do is to make sure that charter schools are held to the same accountability standards as our local schools. We have to make sure that learning and achievement are occurring in charter schools as well as our local neighborhood schools. But what we have to do is we have to invest in our local schools. We have to invest in our school populations. We have to support our teachers to make sure that their practice is what it should be and students are learning. I believe that learning and achievement occur in the classroom. And so we have to support our local schools, reinvest in our schools, make sure that they have the resources and personnel necessary so that our children are learning and achieving in our local schools. And this must also occur in charter schools also. Learning and achievement, we must hold them to the same standards. Now, we know that there's some great charter schools out there, but we know that there's some charter schools that are not so great. And we have to make sure that there's charter